Welcome back, my friends. For this video, we discuss the fallout, the aftermath, and more hidden reasons and context being revealed behind Pochettino's time at this football club and why the club and Pochettino parted ways in the end. So this is really revealing. It comes from The Athletic and there's a lot to dissect and a lot to unpack here. So I hope you guys are sitting comfortably and let's get straight into things. And now, this leaves us with the final big part for today's video, and this is more insight we're learning behind the reasonings behind Pochettino's exit. Now, a massive article came from The Athletic. I think it's the most comprehensive guide behind everything that happened this season. They're very good at creating articles like this. And to start with things, as we know, structural differences, club structural differences around recruitment, around hierarchy, etc., created this amicable split between the directors, the club, and Pochettino. And from the club's part, they decided it was either Pochettino gets offered a contract extension or he goes, because managers must have at least 2 years on their deal. That's how they see things, to have this continuity of ideas following forwards. And with the club World Cup coming next year, we want a manager and a team that has this sense of continuity that's been developed. And if Pochettino won't be here long term, it makes no sense to keep him right now, hence why all parties split. But we are getting even more insight. We are learning about key points of contention between Pochettino and the club. You're seeing it on screen. They include the coach's willingness to fit in with the club's imposed structure, skepticism at using Caicedo and Enzo together, the ownership's desire for a coach to teach football, training methods and injuries, and I'll definitely touch upon this, and this feeling that Poch felt like he was one of the most senior, experienced football figures at the club, which I think kind of makes sense based on Pochettino's pedigree as not only a player, but also as a manager. And of course, he's coming to a club where there's a newly developed team, newly assembled ownership, newly assembled directors who haven't been in the game that long compared to Pochettino. So I can definitely understand his perspective on this matter. To continue on, we learned that initially Poch wanted 3 years because he felt like he needed at least 1 year just to cultivate the squad, just to try and guide the young players, just to help them become a team. And then in the second year, he could expand upon ideas. Now, don't forget this point. We also learned that in the case of Enzo and Caicedo, Poch had some skepticism around using them both together. In the case of Enzo, he didn't know how destructive he was to play as a 6 in the pivot or how creative he was playing as a number 8. And with Caicedo, he felt like Caicedo lacked this, positional discipline and intelligence. Now, I think these are fair arguments. I think Caicedo, the way he ended the season, I think this guy is showing me the signs that he can be a leading Premier League midfield player, but equally, for where he is right now, we can't pretend that he's a finished article, and he does show a lot of that indiscipline with his positioning and this desire to constantly tackle and win every single ball. Sometimes you have to pick and choose your battles, and that's something you can get better at. But it was explained that Poch felt like due to these reasonings, he couldn't leave Caicedo by himself as the holding midfield player. I think this explains why Pochettino really took to Conor Gallagher, because Gallagher essentially acted as the glue to help support both Caicedo and Enzo together. But equally for myself, when I read this report, I think these would have been concerns that maybe Poch had at the start of the season. But I think as time went on, you can clearly see with the development of Caicedo that, okay, he's become a better player and he's becoming integral now to Pochettino's plans. And in the case of Enzo, we learned at the end of the season that he has been injured throughout the season, so he could never really show his best football consistently. And in my opinion, I don't think that Poch would have had any issues working with both Enzo and Caicedo together. Obviously, moving on to recruitment issues, as we know, Pochettino wasn't pleased with the club's willingness to sell Gallagher and Chalobah and their consistent dismissal of his wants to keep these players in his squad. Equally, the Athletic article states that the club feel like at times they also did consider Pochettino, with the key example being them not taking the opportunity to sign Ansu Fati on loan at the start of the season based on Pochettino's recommendations, and also with further examples being Joao Felix, the club deciding not to get him on loan again because Pochettino didn't see any use for him. But equally, Poch felt like key things that he needed for the squad, like experience, like height, they were constantly being overlooked, especially in the experience department. And it was a pretty interesting example given in the article mentioning how, Bettinelli, our third choice goalkeeper, one of the oldest players at the club, he was taking on this leadership role, this experience role that traditionally would have been left for an Azpilicueta, because we just don't have that personnel in the squad right now. And Poch was thinking, okay, there's two former players that we don't know that he was maybe encouraging the club to sign just to help with like the squad dynamics behind the scenes. But the club decided against going down that route. And to be honest, I don't really blame them. But from the club's perspective, they felt like ultimately Pochettino wasn't maximizing the talents at his disposal. Yes, they sympathized with the fact that he lost out on Wesley Fofana, which probably stopped him from using a high line from the start of the season. Yes, and Nkunku, the marquee signing, not having him at the start of the season especially, where would we be with his goals in this team, right? And also other injuries to key players like Ben, Reece James, Lavia. But then I have to say, if the squad was built for this particular brand of like short passing possession football, why did you think Pochettino was the perfect option for this when he's always preferred more of like a powerful type of football, a football that relies upon pressing aggressively and a football that relies upon creating opportunities as quickly as possible? Personally, I do definitely sympathize with the injuries that Poch had to work with, because I think that meant that he constantly had to change tactics more than originally I think he would have liked to have done. I think that when you're missing out on Nkunku, who was quite key to Pochettino and our plans during pre-season, when you lose out on a player like this, that means he goes straight back to the drawing board. And sometimes when you have the pressure on your back, when you're thinking about the start of the season approaching very soon, I think some of these backup ideas that you're forced to turn to don't necessarily work. And I do think that, if not for this terrible start to the season, I think maybe Poch would have been seen in a higher light if maybe some factors worked in his favour at the start of the season. But regardless, one of the key criticisms from the club's part around Pochettino was around training and was around the fitness as well too. Now, obviously we're all on social media. Throughout the season, we've constantly heard criticisms behind the scenes of Pochettino's training methods being dated, his lack of tactical work, his lack of preparation, XYZ, constantly being used against him and against the team this season. And, this came from Alex Goldberg, who does have very good sources at this club. And this finally got double confirmed too by The Athletic. So that does paint a lot of context now. And the club are questioning the intensity of his methods. Now, in my opinion, you should know exactly what you're set to expect and embrace from a Pochettino, because you know what he does with his training, right? And I can't dismiss it entirely, because one of the things that's helped us climb up the table in 2024 is the fact that because our fitness levels are so much higher, it means that we can score a lot of goals in the final 50 minutes of games. And that's been a key advantage for us. And that tends to be a key advantage for most Pochettino teams. But I guess the criticism is a bit deeper than that. And I think it comes from the fact that some of the issues we faced this season, especially with players returning back from injury and then getting injured again, came from being rushed back into participating in very intense training sessions. We're hearing that there's a lot of physical demands. We're hearing that there's a lot of training done on 1v1 encounters, 2v2 encounters, and Pochettino is unrelenting. He expects perfection. He wants 100% every single time. So if you're a player that's been out for a long time or didn't have a preseason, it's a big shock to your body when you're now coming back straight into these intense training sessions, when ideally there would be a period for you where you do these adapt training sessions just to get your body ready for the big intense ones. And that way we could have minimized some of these injuries that came to players at poor parts of the season. So Pochettino can definitely get some blame for this. Yes, I get it, the pressure can make you make bad decisions, but then equally at the same time, fully trust the squad you have. There was also some criticism surrounding Pochettino's data training methods by certain players. We know that Poch preferred to give few instructions to allow players to have more freedom in their approach. And, to give an example, a member of the first team squad was used in a role in a game in which he never played before. And I'm thinking, who could this player be? We have seen Pochettino use certain players in very different positions. I'm thinking about Mudryk, Colwell, Enzo, Gallagher, Gusto. There are a few. You guys comment below who you think this player could be. But equally, there's also criticism in regards to how Poch would select random academy players to help fill the bench week in, week out, and then just discard them. I never seem to have too much care behind who he was actually selecting. Obviously, selecting 2 goalkeepers non-stop isn't a good look too. And a final criticism that the club had towards Pochettino was during large parts of this season. We all saw this, we all complained about this, but we played without an identity, without a structure. It was essentially just playing to win. We weren't doing anything to limit the opposition. We were doing nothing like that. Poch would argue that this is where there was a miscommunication difference, because his argument was, I had to simplify what was happening with these players because they're young. I thought for their current stage of development, it's about finding that feeling for each other's game on the field. Develop their confidence and personality on the field first. Once I see the players have this and can play like this, then I can do stage 2, which is now adding more complexity to the system, the tactics, the roles. But I can't do all of this all at once. And I actually agree, because when you look at the start of the season, and I kept saying this all the time, we were a team that were trying to be the perfect team that could keep possession, that could stop counterattacks, that could score goals, that could do everything to a high level, but it was too much of a high demand. It was too much perfection for a team that needs a lot more time to get used to that. Yes, it was frustrating to watch periods where we play with no ideas or no anything, but it seemed like Pochettino finally realized, you know what, I have to grow this team slowly. My approach at the start of the season just clearly didn't work. We couldn't score goals, and I think when he simplified things, let the players play, let them get that feeling, at least we started to score more goals. And then as the season was coming to its end, I think with the pressure finally falling on Pochettino that, oh crap, I do have to get European football. I was of the belief before that it didn't matter if we got European football or not. I thought we were all on the same wavelength in terms of understanding where this current squad is at this point in time. And it was interesting that when the pressure was finally on him, we did see Cucurella inverting. And then it makes me think, could the players have maybe done this 2 months prior? Or maybe they couldn't have, and this was the only time in which Pochettino could take that risk in introducing these ideas. I don't know, but it's definitely black and white. On one hand, I think the confidence definitely did work because, take this point for example. This was a season in particular where we scored some absolutely unreal goals, some incredible goals. Some of the goals we scored this season would have been goal of the season winners for the past 5-6 seasons. Players are attempting things they would never attempt before, and that can't be dismissed. And you can argue that we start to see players forming more relationships as the season was coming to an end. I'll give an example under Thomas Tuchel. Yes, he introduced systems and tactics and ways to play, but after 2.5 years, did we really see any improvement in terms of players forming that understanding in the final third? We never did. So, I can understand where Pochettino is coming from a coaching perspective. But equally, as I've also been alluding to, I think it was the implementation of these ideas which worked against him. And then the realization at the end that I think we're just too different to really make this work long term. We also learned interestingly through this article of potential little internal conflicts and politics between Egbahli and Todd Boehly. Obviously, Todd Boehly is more hands-off, Egbahli is more hands-on. He's been involved in the big deals we've got done. He talks more often to the directors compared to Todd Boehly. And it makes sense because he's put his money into this investment alongside Boehly and all the other members of Clear Lake Capital, right? So it makes a lot of sense, but it's interesting that the article mentions that Poch found the tensions at times a bit difficult. And I don't know, from Todd Boehly, we saw in his recent interview with Sportico that he spoke about maybe patience, and he seemed to give his backing towards Pochettino, whilst on the other hand, we've heard rumours throughout the whole season that Egbahli didn't see Pochettino as the #1 guy. But it was revealed that this tension, again, no conflicts, nothing serious like that, but I guess the tension alongside all the other difficulties and growing pains at the club made things harder for Pochettino internally, right? So yeah, I think this is giving us even more idea behind why maybe in the long term this may not have worked between Poch and the owners at this club. And now it really is on the owners and directors to get things right, because they can't mess it up now. Whoever this next manager is set to be, he has to be the perfect manager for their vision, and they must give him that patience regardless of growing pains or anything, because otherwise this whole thing could be undermined and this whole project could mean F-all, to be honest with you. So my friends, that is all the latest stories and news that's dropped today. Share yours, give your opinions, and I hope you guys enjoyed the videos today. I'm Nini FC, this is BlueLionsTV. I'll see you guys all later.